Sujan Patel here for the Shake Sales podcast. I got Jesse Ouellette. We're excited to dive into enterprise email, some deliverability best practices, and really, I want to call it like tool stacking slash, the waterfall of tools you can use to really be the most effective for your outbound sales and cold email efforts. Jesse, welcome, dude.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Love what you guys are doing over at Mailshake. Really excited to be on the show today. And a little background on me. Was a sales rep, then became sort of a SaaS founder. As you'd imagine, you've been through that journey a little bit. Email, our product helps people find email addresses, mobile phone numbers, those types of things. We're in the Clay waterfall. A lot of people are using us there, but love to talk to the viewers here today.
Love it. So first and foremost, let's talk about, so everyone is, ever since rotating emails and ever since I'd say the downwind of COVID, everyone's been doing volume. And that's fantastic if you want to teach algorithms to identify patterns and over time kill the effectiveness of that strategy. But speaking of effectiveness, what's an effective way? What are some, what are you finding that works well to get to those enterprise or those, more secure emails or domains?
Yeah. So one thing we're doing a lot of is really when we take on, we'll look at a cold email group of people to target. We'll look at the actual servers they're using. So if there are a lot of them are on like traditional Google and Microsoft, it's probably going to be a little bit easier than if they're all on Proofpoint and Mimecast, right? So this is something that I don't think a lot of people are taking into account. I haven't really talked about this yet on any other shows or podcasts, so it's a little bit of a secret there. But if you start to think about if you're going to have success or not, a lot of it's going to be dictated by the actual the MX server, right? Because a lot of these servers are actually just phoning home. And when they get a report as spam or they report like a manual spam report. So if you think about who's invested the most money here, it's going to be any of your enterprises. That's where I think people are kind of going maybe too heavy on email versus the flip side, which would be maybe local businesses and sort of smaller businesses where they don't have some of those capabilities like Proofpoint, Mimecast. They can't afford those products. So those are going to give you a much easier time at landing in the primary inbox with tools like Mailshake and other tools in the market.
Love it. Yeah, I think my general rule is the bigger the deal or the bigger the company, the more not necessarily manual, but the more higher touch you probably want to do. Or and then if you're pitching, we have this business called Zoom Shift, which is in the scheduling, timekeeping space. We sell to like restaurants, retail, coffee shops. It's more of a broader kind of brute force volume play, but there's still touch points, right? I find my 2 cents on outbound is do what others aren't willing to do. So if everyone's doing mass volume of emails, find an alternative channel and go one-on-one. And if you think, oh, it's going to cost a lot, sure, it costs maybe more in manpower, hours, time spent, but you're going to get way better results and you're going to stand out a little bit more, right? So we've been actually, like, contrary to the volume play you would think for SMB, we've been doing phone call, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever we can do to get a hold of that like sub vertical that we kind of find or that pocket of audience. And it works way better. Like I'd say, we send more emails, but our leads are like our demos mostly come from LinkedIn or phone.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that same, and even LinkedIn really. And that's one of the ones that's kind of the elephant in the room, right? There's different ways to automate that. And you want to be careful you don't get blocked by LinkedIn and you follow the terms and services. But, I think it's not a lot of people are talking about. You want to go to the areas where people aren't competing as much, right? Because there's a whole ton of emails coming at you right now. If you look at your inbox, you got to be smart about this.
Yep, exactly. What else do people need to know about just going after that large enterprise? I mean, does volume still work?
Yeah, the enterprise is so volume, there's times it does, there's times it doesn't. I think one of the things we're seeing, as we talk to people. Where we do see it working is, you don't always need the most senior person at the company. If you look at like any of your standard like data providers, I'm sure they could tell you that the same emails are getting exported every time. You're going to probably have to be a little bit more crafty on how you get into a company now, right? Like you might want to go for that maybe person who's closer to the pain point, right? That has a little bit less, like, they're probably waiting for an email from somebody in sales, right? There's that scenario, right? So you might want to go a little lower in your reach. I know it's always been, any kind of like senior sales guru will tell you, go after the VP and the decision maker. Don't even mess around. But a lot of the times now, you're going to want to get people closer to the pain. In the big enterprises, you got to be pretty low to get to that point. So you might have some better responses there. And then, just like I said, in general, what we're also seeing is, the smaller businesses aren't getting it as much, right? And, if your product serves this market, right, it might be a good place. And if you were building a SaaS company, this might be a good place to start, right? Like it's just a little bit easier of a time getting through the front door and maybe a little less intense on the sales process. But that sort of like smaller market where you're only going up against less companies with less email security, right, for email anyways. And then I think there's one other area that a lot of people are forgetting is, if you're going to send emails out and you're emailing people who are really technical, we're finding that it's much harder to get through because a lot of them report your domains as spam, right? So they'll immediately go in and report it as spam, and they'll know that, right? So if you're sending cold emails or whatever, you're going to have much better luck with people who are less technical. And I say this, and people are always, they're always like, well, "What do you mean? What if I only target these people?" But it's just a matter of like the right, whatever you're taking to the gunfight, right? Like you want to take the right tools to the right place, right? And you're building a house, you gotta build a house a certain way in the city than you do in the suburbs and the different areas. You got to really take this into consideration now. If you're emailing software engineers at Fortune 500 companies, you probably are going to get put in report as spam, one out of every three. Like you're going to get hit every time, right?
Yeah.
But if it's sales leaders, they're probably going to try to respond back to you, increasing your engagement, and that could help a lot, right? So keep that in mind as you're doing it, and as you're deciding when to use email, when to use LinkedIn, when to use the phone, that type of thing, right? Like that's the stuff you got to really think about.
Love it. Yeah, I think what you're doing here is we're adding like a layer of complexity of, okay, in order to be effective today, since everyone's just getting hammered, or you're more likely to be marked as spam from the sales leaders or larger orgs, because if 1 in 3 people mark you as spam, you got like 2 weeks before you're done.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
max like 2 weeks. I mean, I'm like giving people like that's maybe a week even, right? Just depends on how hard you go. But I like this whole like go after the person closest to the pain point.
It's just some good ways to kind of come off that basic, like, hey, just grab every VP at every Fortune 500 company and do that. I mean, you're going to have to get a little bit smarter as it becomes harder, right? When with some of the things. And I think one sign you want to look for, the biggest thing I tell people is like, if your inboxes are starting to get locked out, right? Like that's probably the sign there's a problem, right? You're going to get a message from Google. They're going to say, hey, we think you might be in, spamming. Hold on. And, what they're looking for really is a complaint rate of about 3 on 1,000, right? Which is pretty low, right? Like you think about that, like go show 50 people at your company your email and see if any of them would say that they would mark it as spam, right? I think if you have to do that math, because if you have one person out of 50, that's definitely going to hit the number of 3 out of 1,000, right? Now, it's probably a little unrealistic to get 3 out of 1,000, but as close to that number as you can possibly get. Normal, regular, law-abiding or whatever you want to call it, the citizens don't send emails that get marked as spam. It just doesn't happen. So it's really easy for, as you were saying, even to test algorithms. If you want to do that, that's one thing, but got to be a little smarter about it now.
Yeah, exactly. I want to end with I want to talk about tool stacking and kind of how you think about this waterfall. And then let's go I want everyone here watching, listening, reading, however you're consuming this, to see how you can modify your approach with the kind of nuggets we just talked about here. Um, my guess is everyone listening is probably like, oh shit, no wonder my spam rate's so high.
Yeah.
When I go after the Microsoft Exchange server domains or like the Fortune 5,000. Anyways, let's talk about waterfalls. What's that all about?
Yeah.
Give me a rundown.
So waterfall enrichment's been around for a little while. Clay has done a great job at just sort of bringing together a lot of different data providers. So we have a tool that helps people find email addresses. We have a couple unique ways to do it. Some of the bigger tools are staying away from it, as you can imagine. I think there was people like ZoomInfo aren't going to really go in there because they don't want to kind of reduce their price. But what you're trying to do with the waterfall enrichment is you're trying to actually bring down the cost of your data. Because a lot of the times, if you do these campaigns, you're realizing, holy crap, I just spent, $40, $50 to extract 1,000 records out of a data provider. Well, what Waterfall tries to do is it sort of puts them in order, right? It puts all of the email addresses in order, or the providers in order, and you can kind of decide which one you want to try to find it first. Now, what you'd want to do is, right, you want to figure out which one's the most accurate, and the one that's the lowest cost. Now, there's one area though that I think a lot of people are going really, really south on it, is they're not looking at the invalid rate of these waterfalls. And I think this is a very dangerous area for people right now, even in, some of the tools that are out there that are doing waterfall enrichment. They're not looking at like, well, how easy is it to get a bounced email address, right, from these providers? That's one thing we've been testing a lot on our tool, and really what we've been differentiating on. Basically, what I mean by that is you can go in and just type in, whatever you want to type in and see how that tool kind of reacts. Are they just trying to do are they just trying to like first name dot last name every time? Is that like their strategy for finding emails, right? And when they're doing that, that's just wasting money of yours, right? You got to really understand the total cost of ownership, really. And what waterfall enrichment does is it just kind of goes through provider by provider by provider to really figure out, hey, is this, does this provider have it? It's the lowest cost and most accurate that we know, but it doesn't find as much or something like that. And that's kind of what it is. You're waterfalling down your data providers. And, I think it's a nightmare for companies like ZoomInfo. I think I've talked about this a little bit because they're going to be stressed out because they could see like, hey, if everybody goes this route, no one's going to want to pay 40 cents, 50 cents. They're going to get more accurate data and do that. That's just like kind of waterfall in general, for how it works with like finding email addresses, phone numbers, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone always, so we run a data company. You do as well. We've done surveys and we've compared notes with other competitors and we call them like friends, frenemies or allies in the space. Like we're all kind of trying to do the same thing. The reality is consumer happiness with a data provider is in the 60-70% range because no provider is 100% accurate at every single time, any moment of time. There's always a delay or something changes. So you have to stack these data providers. And effectively, when you combine 5 or more, you get 99% of the value. And on top of that, you're probably paying significantly less because you're not always using all 5, these credit systems and all that stuff. So I love this approach. And I think this is kind of the best way forward. Because like, what's the best tool? All of them. Go buy them all and do that waterfall system. And I would say like the waterfall might change based off who you're targeting, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like one of the things I think a lot of people are starting to do is they're saying like, all right, let me see who's got the best provider for the mid market. I think that's like one area. Another one area I see people doing waterfall that's really helping is like Europe, right? So if you buy, certain providers, they might not have any coverage in Europe, right? And then you buy another one that does, you kind of hear who has what. I think the waterfall enrichment really provides that. Now, what I think is happening, the biggest transformation I'm seeing that's kind of enabling this technology to sort of, it's been around for a while. It's just a matter of how it's being used. Is I'm starting to see that salespeople are becoming more comfortable with APIs, right? Even though like Clay is just a spreadsheet and it sort of, pulls in a bunch of APIs that help you fill out the spreadsheet. I think what it's
Hmm.
done is it's made it easier to call multiple providers and sort of set up that automated workflow. And it's a little bit different than, your traditional like Zap or, like Zapier, where it's like, you know, sort of like a bunch of pipes on a screen. It's more of like a spreadsheet, something you're used to, but it's,
Hmm.
and you could do this stuff in other tools, like you could do it in Airtable or Google Sheets, but I'm noticing a lot of sales and marketing growth, even product people, maybe some finance, I think even are starting to really use tools like this to really make decisions. And what we've done is we've just made sure to keep really, really accurate API docs, really.
Hmm.
So I think that's really the biggest change is there's more, I'm noticing more salespeople are willing to sort of jump outside their comfort zone, which is refreshing too, right? You see them kind of like building their own like outbound campaigns with it, maybe loading it into tools like Mailshake and things like that, right? Like that's kind of the sort of that we're seeing a lot of is people are building the campaigns and then using tools like Mailshake to maybe send it, and that's sort of like where I think there's a lot of value still being, where you essentially are research doing 20 to 30 minutes of research on every prospect
Hmm.
automatically, right? Like it just helps a lot, right?
Love it. Love it. Jesse, there's a lot of big, small, actionable things everyone can do. Big impact, super simple to execute. I guarantee you. Where can people go to find, keep in touch and learn more from you?
Yeah, definitely. So the two best places would be LinkedIn, just reach out, DM me or whatever. And then obviously leadmagic.io. We're helping people find email addresses. We've got an API for that, or you can do that. So if you want to check us out there. But yeah, really, really enjoyed the interview and really great meeting you. I've heard a lot of great things about your organization and how you operate. So love the mentality.
Thanks, man.